Good morning, everyone, and we are delighted to see you all. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Delaware, I am indeed pleased to launch this program. It ties in with one of the key goals of the League, which is to encourage active participation in government. We're guided by the words of Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, who served in the early 20th century, when he said, "The only title in our democracy superior to that of president is the title of citizen." And we're hoping that this program will give all of us some important tips on how we can become better citizen advocates. We have several members of the General Assembly here with us this morning, and I would like to introduce them, as well as one who is going to join us via video. She was not able to be here live this morning. We have Representative Ruth Briggs-King. She was elected in 2009 and represents District 37 in Sussex County. We have Representative Larry Lambert, who represents the 7th District in Northern Newcastle County. He was elected in 2020. And do we have Representative Shupe? Has he joined us yet? And wait a couple of minutes for hopefully that he will make it on. Mentioning a few ground rules, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the States League's website as well as our Facebook page. Because we do have such a large number of participants, we will be keeping everyone muted except for our speakers. If you have questions, be sure to put them in the chat box. And one of our League members, Patti Christopher, will be monitoring that and bringing those questions up as we move along. One thing to mention about the questions, we are focusing today on how to advocate, not what to advocate. So we're not going to get into issues related to specific bills or specific issues. So please keep that in mind when you think of questions that you do want to ask. Is there any sign of Representative Shupe? I hope he's all right. The other member of our panel, who, as I said, is joining us via video, is Senator Marie Pinkney. She was elected in 2020 and represents District 13. And we will be hearing from her, as I say, via video. Well, I think we want to begin. We don't want to keep everyone waiting. Time is precious, and we don't have a lot of time this morning, so I think we should just get started. Let's go with the first question via recording.
In your view, Senator Pinkney, what's the best way for constituents to reach out to you to talk about issues that concern them? That is, how is it that we can best communicate with you about our concerns and your concerns?
Well, hello, Jack, and hello, Linda. It's so exciting to be here with you all this afternoon. One of my favorite topics is how we keep the community engaged with us, because we are the community. And I think that right there is the answer to your question, by remembering that although we have titles that sound fancy, we are just people and we are easily reachable. Especially here in Delaware, we're so lucky that as a small state, we really have access, our constituents really have access to us. So something as simple as an email with the issue that you're concerned about, whether it's your neighborhood needing a stop sign or whether it's gun violence in your community, something as simple as an email is one of the fastest ways to reach us. But you can also walk up to us on the street. I have people that stop in the grocery stores and at Walmart all the time. And it's exciting, you know, it's exciting to recognize that we are just people and we care about the issues that our constituents care about. So chances are, if you catch me at the gym and I'm working out, I'm happy to put down my weights and talk to you about what's going on in the community. And so I think that is the answer to your question, by remembering that we're just people and you reach us the same way you reach anybody else, via email, seeing us on the street, running into us at Leg Hall, or calling our offices.
Well, thank you again to Senator Pinkney remotely. So let's go to the first question about the best ways for constituents to reach you. And let me first turn to Ruth Briggs-King. What's your advice to citizen advocates on how to best communicate? And I highlight best communicate with you.
Well, I think first of all, it's about communicating and not just communications. Communications is a flow down, but communicating with someone is really a back and forth. And the best way to do that is through relationship building. So to see them and speak to them, not just when you want something or advocating for something, but to establish a little bit of a relationship with them. So you know a little bit about them. For me, as Senator Pinkney had said, it doesn't matter if I'm in the grocery store, if I'm in a restaurant, there's usually somebody that's, hey, hate to bother you, want to ask you something, and really don't mind that. I find email to work very well for me. Those that have, or a lot of us have our phone numbers out there, they can easily text, because even when we're in session, we might be able to take a glimpse at our email or a text message and get something moving that's important to a person. So I think it's knowing that we are accessible. For many cases, we're working and living and very active and engaged in our districts, but it's about building relationships and sharing your personal story or personal comments that you have. One thing I will say is I follow Facebook a little bit, but I don't really like to message or communicate in Facebook. I don't think that's an effective platform for me to have a good discussion one-on-one with someone. I just feel very uncomfortable about that. And I'll frequently say, if they instant message me, give me a call or send me an email. I'm just not comfortable doing some communications with Facebook. And I would say that don't be afraid to reach out before you want something. And also, like many of my colleagues in Sussex, I have meet and greets. Come out and have a cup. I don't drink coffee, but come out and meet me at one of my local events and establish that relationship I was talking about that's so important, so that it's just not when you have a burning issue, but you really are part of that process. So I do think it's about communicating. And please, if you call me because you need to talk to me, leave a message. You won't believe how many missed calls that a legislator may get. And so I don't know if it's I don't know if it was an error call, if it was, a robocall. I don't know what it was. If you don't leave me a message, then I'm just going to assume it was an error call and not return. If you leave me a message, I'm going to return the call, especially when we're bombarded with a lot of phone calls all at one time. If you don't leave a message, then I'm going to skip on to the one that leaves a message.
What great advice, and thank you. Thank you, Ruth, because you are one of the great leaders particularly in the General Assembly and in Sussex. And I think we've always found you very available to express our concerns and sometimes our support. Let me turn to you, Representative Lambert. You've heard some great advice from your colleague. What's your view about how we can best communicate with you?
Yeah, thank you, Jack and Linda, for having me and for having my colleagues. The League, you guys are one of my favorite groups. I see so many familiar faces. Thank you for making time this morning. And you even being here, this is an example of citizen advocacy. For me, when we talk about the best way to reach a legislator, I would say one of the most effective ways is to ask. We have different personalities. We work in different ways. I really want to piggyback off of my colleague, Ruth Briggs-King, Representative Briggs-King, in saying that it's really about relationship building. So, go ahead and ask, what is the most effective way to reach you? For me, I remember somebody asked me, where's my office at? And I said, my office is wherever the people are. So for me, I'm the last person to leave civic association meetings. I'm the last person to leave volunteer opportunities, because people stop me and they talk to me and I make sure that I'm accessible. On Friday, I was volunteering with the Pathways to Apprenticeship, teaching young people second chance citizens interviewing skills. I didn't leave there until 45 minutes later. Yesterday, I was at a civic association meeting and I didn't leave there until 30 minutes later. Why? Because citizens were advocating. It's very effective. I'm always out there. Feel free to stop me. And also connect with some of the leaders in a representative's district, because they have my ear. they're the ones that know me well. So it's all about network building. For example, on this call right now are members of my district. So feel free to build those connections, and that's the best way to reach me. Thank you.
Great, and thank you. And you've always been available to us, and you're such a great responder to our questions and our sometimes our asks. Let me turn to Representative Bryan Shupe, who has joined us, and say, welcome, Bryan. And what are your thoughts about the best way that constituents can meet with you and reach you about their concerns?
Yeah. Thank you, Jack, for having me on this morning, and thank you for everyone who's taking time to talk with us. I enjoyed talking last month to you, and I think we have another call next month as well. So this is really helpful for myself to get to know a lot of you. I already know a lot of you, but it's really great to continue the relationship on. As Ruth Briggs-King said, it's really about relationship building for me. I like to know the individuals who call me. That's one of the reasons why I don't do a lot of Facebook, just like Ruth said, because somebody reaches out to me on Facebook, I will say, hey, here's my number, give me a call, or hey, here's my email, give me a call, because I want to know more about them as well. It's not only the issue. I want to know where they're coming from, what their background is, why they feel that way, so that when I'm looking at, getting calls on the same issue from, let's just pick a number, 100 different people, I can start to see why certain people feel a way and what aspect of their work life or their social life or their as a parent coming from. And I can start to develop these issues a lot more than just, hey, you vote yes or hey, vote no. And that really means a lot to me, being able to kind of know the reasons why and the life behind the person that's advocating for whatever it may be. And that really helps me kind of look at more than just that one person, but look at our society in general, our communities in general, and kind of start looking at more of a personal touch. For me, I actually enjoy, and I think my wife still doesn't understand this after being married with me for 11 years. She doesn't understand when we go to the grocery store that I enjoy talking, with people and taking double the time. But I guess that's why I got into this field as well, because I just enjoy talking with people and kind of solving, big problems. It's something that I really enjoy. And I do encourage people to come up to me if I'm ever out somewhere in the grocery store or something. A lot of times if my wife are out together shopping at, say, shopping for groceries, we'll kind of just like split up, and she'll be like, yep, you go take you go talk with people, and I'll go get the rest of it. So it's definitely a family thing. I also have people that come by. So we have a small business. They'll come by our store. They're, for the most part, they are very welcoming. I have people who will drop off. This is a letter that was dropped off yesterday to my store, and very, very nice. On the other end, I would say also be detailed in what you're looking for or what your personal story is, because sometimes I'll have people that reach out to me and just say, well, what do you think about this? And it'll be some broad opening of, what do you think about this bill? Or what do you think about gun violence? Or it's like, there's so many aspects to go. I want to have a dialogue with you that's actually going to push forward, and we can come up with maybe some solutions to the challenges that you face or your community faces. So the more detail, the better. I love talking with people in person or on the phone, because I can ask them questions. They can ask me questions that they may not think of. And also, I really enjoy when people write me personal letters like this and deliver them either to my store or deliver it to Leg Hall, because I can see through their writing that they have taken the time to, really develop in their understanding of what's going on. And I make sure that everybody that sends me a personalized letter, that I try to call them back within 24, 48 hours. And that's just me personally. As my colleague, Representative Lambert said, we're all different. So there might be some that enjoy reaching out by social media, but I really don't think that's personalized. I don't feel like we're getting at the depth of the conversation that we need to have.
Well, thank you very much, Bryan. And maybe we need to have a sponsor, being the Delaware grocery store owners, for this session, since I think it's very clear that all three of you are extremely open to citizens. And I think that's so refreshing in this current environment. Unless we have any questions in the chat, which I don't see, then let's turn to our next question, Kim.
Well, let's look at it from the other side. What are the don'ts? What are the types of contact that don't work for you?
That's a good question. One of the things that I think has been difficult is when people reach out via social media, because we have so many different platforms. Sometimes it's hard to stay on top of the direct messages on social media. So it's not that it's a don't, but I don't check those as frequently as I check my email. So if you can find the state legislator's email, which is easy because it's our first name dot last name at delaware.gov, that's probably so much quicker than on social media that I personally don't check as often. Outside of that, for me, I don't have any other hardcore restrictions. Sometimes people reach out to me through my legislative aide, which is also better because he's always in my ear. Or people like to get connected to me through people that they know. And sometimes that feels a little bit more comfortable. But as far as don'ts, I would say I don't have any hardcore do nots. But sometimes people do in their emails come off a little bit aggressive. And so that can be a little bit frightening or startling, especially in today's climate. So I think it's important to show passion, but making sure that that passion doesn't come off necessarily aggressive or intimidating.
There we go. Well, this video process isn't perfect, so please bear with us. We've already heard from each of you a little bit about the don'ts, but let's give Representative Lambert now a chance to react to that and add any don'ts to our understanding.
Yeah, I think we covered it well. I agree with what my colleague said. Thank you.
Good. Representative Briggs-King, did you want to add anything?
Thank you.
Don't.
I would, and probably. Well, I think one of the things that I first, and we'll probably all stress this, is our staff is just awesome, because when we're not readily available, they are, and they very graciously and aptly can handle calls or can let us know this is a hot topic if we're in a meeting or something and can't do that. We all rely on them so much. If I were to say through my many years of experience now as a don't, and that would be when I get an email that says, I demand you this, and I'm your constituent and I demand, and sometimes I'll respond to that constituent, well, based on your line of thinking, that means my other 20,989 constituents don't matter. Because sometimes you can get a little testy, but I think, you know, the tone, and we have noticed, and some of my colleagues haven't served as long as I have, but over the last 3 to 4 years, some of the civility or some of the tone is very different than it previously had been. And so I would just think that it's easy when you're not face to face with someone to blast them either on Facebook or an email, or just, I'm going to tell them. And most of us try and hold back and not do that. So I would say a don't for me is to begin your conversation like you're the only one, or I demand the special attention, or I demand you to do that, because it's frustrating. We may want to do that and we can't do that. We're constrained by what we can and can't do. So that's one of the things I think, if I could tell folks, is to use your own words and be careful. We're people just like you are. And so would you like someone to speak to you that way? I don't think we're any different. And so sometimes it's just remembering that it's okay to be passionate and be advocate, but at least be a little respectful.
Okay. Representative Shupe, do you have anything to add to these points?
Yeah, I would say, especially with social media, if that is a route that you use a lot, just to ask people to be understanding that, even though instant, a lot of social media is kind of instant back and forth. Usually with myself, it will not be. So I may get back to you, but it may be 24 hours or 48 hours later, even if you send me an instant text on social media. One of the things that I do is to prepare myself So if you ask me a question about a bill, or if you ask me about or tell me about some concerns that you have, I will usually go to the bill sponsor, or I will go to the department that is under and try to find out some research. So I'm coming back to you with some useful information and not just, hey, let me listen. Yes, I want to listen, but I also want to give you some details and be prepared for that conversation as well. So I would say, maybe not a don't, but be understanding when you're reaching out in those avenues. I have had recently some people, as Ruth said, that were kind of aggressive or demanding and want to take up a lot of time, want to keep on social media over and over and over again. And I try to explain to them that, look, I want to listen to you. I want to take your concerns. I'm more than willing to have a conversation with you. But at the end of the day, if I take the entire day up with you, there's so many other constituents that are, want to hear, what I have to say or want me to listen to their concerns, that it's really not fair to them as well to have one constituent take up so much time. So it's really a balance for us. And then the other thing I would just say is a don't is, they're okay, but a mass email that comes out and everyone, it says the same exact email and it has your name at the top and then your address at the bottom. I will read through a few of them kind of to see what the concerns are and see if there's anything that I can adjust to or anything that I can be able to get done. But after about 10 of them, when it's the same exact letter, I'm gonna click through to the next one because we have so many constituents that really we need to get to. And again, putting those personal stories, doing a personal email, I do read all of those. It's just when you get flooded with hundreds of the same exact one and you've got to kind of put your hat on of time management. Those are the ones that kind of get lost and get lost in the email.
Well, let's deviate just a little bit because I know there's a question, but you brought up a point that was one of our exact questions, is how you all react to these mass emails. And I don't know, Kim, if we can play that video, because Senator Pinkney had a slightly different view on that. And then it'll be interesting to hear from the other two representatives. Well, sometimes organizations, including the League of Women Voters, have campaigns where they send out a message to their membership and say, we want to pass this particular bill, and here's a draft email we want all of you to send. Now, does that kind of message, when you get a lot of emails that say pretty much the same thing, even though they're signed by individuals, how do you react to those types of emails?
No, I think all of us feel a little differently about that. I don't mind it. You know why I don't mind it? Because to me, it means even though they're pre-written for people and it's essentially the same email, one, that means it's easier for me because I don't have to read through a whole bunch of the emails because I know what they all say and I know what the issue is. But even though it's pre-populated, seeing how many people care enough about that issue to take the time to send it is still something that I pay attention to. So I don't think that people should discredit that, because it takes a lot of time to compose a well thought out email with data and points. And so it's easy for people to have that template written for them. So to me, it's nice because I don't have to read a whole bunch of different emails, which I don't mind, but it does get time consuming. I can read the first one. I know what it says. And then on top of that, I know how many people took the time out of their day to make sure that I received that email. So I really like those.
Interesting. Yeah. Didn't expect that answer. As I said,
it's easy. It's still a lot of time to click through them, but I still appreciate knowing how many people care.
And understand.
Okay, well then let's see how Representative Lambert comes down on this issue.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good question. And I just wanted to mention that since this meeting began, I already got 2 phone calls from advocates, constituents. So it's people are always reaching out. And like my colleague said, that communication via phone is always effective in regards to mass emails. One of the ways that I process mass emails is if I recognize a few of the names, if they're coming from my constituents, I receive it as my constituents care enough about this to send mass emails and all. So if the names are, from, Sussex, I represent in northern Newcastle County. I can walk to PA from my house. I'm way up here. But if I'm getting these mass emails from individuals in Sussex and Kent County and everything, for me, it comes across as a miss. It isn't really effective or impactful. So that's generally the way that I process it. If a number of people in my district are hopping on the mass emails, I receive it as that, they really do care. Thank you.
And Representative Briggs-King, what is your take on this one? I
Thanks.
think you mentioned it already briefly.
Yeah, I did. And so because I'm used and I serve on a lot of committees with a lot of controversial issues. And so, I can look at my mailbox on a Friday afternoon and think I pretty well cleared it. And then by the next morning when I see 300, I'm like, oh, so I know it's on the agenda next week. And so the call that come out, I know some people are uncomfortable in writing and it's much easier for them to say, yes, I agree with that and just send it on. I do sort of what my colleagues mentioned. I look at them. I will go ahead if I'm getting a very similar, I call them a call to action and all the verbiage is the same. I will type one response that will be the same to all of them, because if they're going to send me one response, then I'm going to send them my one response as well. I try to communicate with all of them that send it to me, because sometimes, like in Sussex County, I might be the only Sussex County representative on that committee. And so they feel I'm their voice because their representative isn't on that committee. So they're letting me know their opinion. And you sort of keep track of those that have responded, because generally I feel for everyone that writes me, there's probably 5 others in that circle who feel the same and don't. It's not as effective, I don't believe, as that personal story. When you tell me, I think that Senator Pinkney said that when you send me an email and tell me how this personally affects you or how you think about it, even if you adjust that blanket email, it helps me understand some others' rationale, and it helps form my opinion or makes me seek more information. But when I'm inundated, and a lot of them are from out of my district, I don't give them the same response because I feel that's their representatives to do that. I also, when they send it to everybody, and I can tell that they've got a listserv and they're sending it to 50 people, and then they want the reply to 50 people, that doesn't work well for me either. I want the one-on-one with you.
Right. I think we have some questions. Patti, you want to pick up on that?
Certainly. Thank you for all these great answers. I think jumping back to the very first question about the best way of communicating, and all 4 of you really did a great job on that. However, the one question was, how would you get to the younger voters and constituents who don't really use the email and phone calls, but are more on the social media and texting and such? How would you get to that? Who would like to go on that?
Yeah, Representative Shupe, you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. Yeah, there are a lot of people that follow, that maybe some of them, that's their only platform that they're on, is social media. And I think it's, maybe more prevalent in younger individuals, but I think there's some other ones, in other age groups that do as well. Usually when somebody reaches out to me through that, I will let them know that I've heard them, that I've received it, and then ask them, hey, my favorite response is, do you have a phone number that I can reach out to you about this? And then probably 98% of the time, they will give me their phone number, and I will call them on the phone, and we'll have a discussion that way. So I think the initial of getting to me anyway through social media is completely fine, especially if that's what you're comfortable with. I think the best way for anyone to communicate with us is whatever way they feel is more comfortable. If they feel that social media is more comfortable for them than writing a letter or than calling, then I want them to reach out through social media if that's where they feel their comfortability level is. But usually I'll say, hey, what's your phone number? And then I'll call them, that day, and we'll have a talk. And I think that also, again, develops that relationship.
Okay, Patti, why don't you give the next question, and we can let Representative Lambert answer that one.
Okay, well, the question was that Senator Pinkney said that we could find the legislative aids on the General Assembly page, but they can't find the representative's aids. How can we go about getting that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So they're referencing the Legis page, not having our legislative aid on it.
Apparently, that was the.
Okay, I'm happy to take a look at that to see if maybe that can be amended. Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
front and center.
And I guess the last one that really, well, there was quite a few about the emails, but I think you've all answered that unless there's someone who needs more clarification. But I think the last one that was just questioned, as far as the long emails and such, how about petitions? Representative King, would you like to take that?
Yes, when you were talking about the large influx of emails, how effective are petitions? And I will tell you, some of the best petitions I read are the ones that come from like the Autism Foundation, or sometimes senior centers, where they've been in there and they've written a little card. They've written something that comes in addition to where there's this letter asking you to support something. And so although they didn't do it on email, they've done it this way. They've signed something or filled out a card or drawn something or whatever. And I find those to be highly effective. I usually look through them, once again, trying to see where they're from. Are they my constituents, so I can connect with them or give them feedback on, I heard you and here's what I'm doing. So for me, it's another powerful way. Although if there's not that personal thing with it, I think it's very easy sometimes to get somebody to sign on something and maybe they don't really understand. I can't tell you the number of times somebody say, support House Bill 348, and that's not the number. I need you to tell me the issue, at least personal enough that I know the issue is recreational marijuana. The issue is death with dignity. This is the issue, because sometimes the numbers lead me to wonder, do you really understand what it is you're asking or advocating? So there's three things when I communicate. I want to know how they feel. I want to know what it is they need to know or want to know. And then I need to know, what do they want me to do? What would they like me to do? Three things I think are very important: how they're feeling, what they're asking, and what they want done.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions, I don't believe, because everything, the main ones were all about the email. I think you all answered that. Thank you.
Why don't we move to the next question?
What a handsome guy. What about contact from advocates who don't live in your home district? You know, each legislature chairs or serves on multiple committees within the General Assembly. Is it appropriate for Delaware citizens outside your district to contact you, for example, to urge that a particular bill be released from a committee that you serve on?
That's a really good question. I think that it is appropriate, especially if you're talking about a bill that should be released. If it's a committee that the individual serves on, yes. Now, if it's not a committee that the senator or representative serves on, then I don't think that you should spend time trying to get other legislators on board until maybe it goes to the floor. But if you're talking about getting it released from committee, then I don't see anything wrong with reaching out to the legislators that serve on that committee to make sure they give it a favorable vote so that it can be released from committee. What I will say is, when we're talking about, just general outreach before a bill gets into committee, sometimes we'll have constituents that reach out to us about specific issues. For instance, people might reach out to me about education. I love education. I think it's important. Wouldn't be sitting here today without you all, but that's not my expertise area. So 9 times out of 10, what I would do is, if they want to talk about a policy issue that's not in a committee, I would direct them to Senator Sturgeon or Senator Lockman, who have extensive expertise in education. And I receive the same from my colleagues who receive issues around criminal justice or the correctional system.
Well, I think what a great answer. We've discussed this briefly, but many contacts come from outside your district. What advice do you have for citizens as to how they should approach you? Let's start with Bryan Shupe.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely. I think it's appropriate. There's things that cross districts. There's issues that cross districts. There's issues that people are very passionate about because of something that has happened in their personal lives. So I think the most important thing is that an individual reaches out, that they actually make that contact with somebody up at Legislative Hall and reaches out to somebody that they feel comfortable with talking with. I'll echo my colleague, Senator Pinkney. It may be a situation where I don't feel like I am the expert voice on that issue. So I will recommend talking to a colleague, and I'll usually copy them on the email, or I'll give you their number to be able to reach out to them as well. And I'll give them a heads up too, to say that this person is calling them. Or it may be even a department within the state. It may be something that's not in the purview of the legislative branch and something that can be taken care of within a certain department. And that's a lot of our legislative aides. I think that's the majority of what they deal with, is people that need issues, whether it be through the Department of Labor or Department of Education, that they can actually talk to those departments directly. And that's going to get you a quicker response, and usually a response that's going to be more reflective of what you want as well. So absolutely, I think reaching out is definitely the first step. It needs to be done. If you feel comfortable with that person, then that's who you should reach out to. And all of us, I think, are, I don't want to say trained, but we're we have the ability, we know by now what is and what is not our expertise, and who is that go-to person to be able to help you. The same thing with issues where somebody will call me and say, we don't see eye to eye on this issue. You voted against it, and I wanted you to vote for it. But I'm still reaching out to you because you're my representative. And I'll say, look, here's the person that I feel understands this issue, even though I voted against it. You may want to talk with them and see how you can help on this issue, or how you can get involved with this issue further, if this is something that you're passionate about.
Thank you, Representative. So, Representative Briggs-King, how do you feel about these contacts from citizens outside your district or outside Sussex County?
Yeah, and I have no problem, because as I said, sometimes they may not feel a connection or know someone in their own district, and maybe they've heard. I think a lot of times, particularly in Sussex County, I'm contacted because people just see it's easier for them, and this is a gender issue, to reach out to me on certain issues maybe than one of my male colleagues. But I also think that we need to remember that all the people we serve, they may not be technically residents of Delaware, but that doesn't mean they don't have an interest in Delaware. So maybe I have a seasonal or a summer home I'm invested in Sussex County. Maybe there's other issues that they're coming to Delaware for. Many times there's companies that have interest in Delaware, and so they're reaching out to us to express their concerns about bills or legislation. I find that I learn and I do better when I know better. And so if I'm able to have a dialogue and ask questions and consider a different perspective, because if I listen to a constituent talk to me about some concern, and they might be from Newcastle County, it could be providing me a different perspective than if I just look with blinders in my own district. So I don't mind taking that, answering that. But if I am pressed and I have a meeting, you only have so much time in time management, I'm going to give a preference probably to my own district. I don't like stepping. I told somebody who was asking me to solve a problem for them, I said, with all due respect, I don't like to play in somebody else's sandbox. You need to communicate with your representative. I will follow up and work with them, but I don't want to upset them. I wouldn't appreciate somebody coming in and trying to take over something that I may not even be aware of. So I'm very cautious.
Great advice, Representative. Representative Lambert, how do you feel about out of district contacts?
Yeah, I think that a lot of my colleagues have laid out, the way that it works. Earlier, I said that if I get a mass email from outside of my district, it has no impact. That's true. If I get a personalized touch from somebody outside of my district, like Senator Pinkney said, if it's about a topic that, a committee that I chair, a committee that I'm on, that penetrates, that can work. For example, I'm co-chair of the Justice for the Oversight Committee and Environmental Justice Committee. And I have residents from all across the state reaching out to me. We've had community listening sessions in different counties. And I want to thank Representative Shupe for also serving on that committee. And for me, I'll get contacts from all different kinds of people. And something that I'm sure my colleagues have experienced too is that there are people outside of our district where we are their honorary representative and they'll only reach out to us. And it's like Representative Ruth Briggs-King said, sometimes they are more comfortable with you for different reasons, you know? And in that space, we're always happy to pick up. When I mentioned someone reached out to me earlier, they're just outside of my district, but I'm going to answer that call the same way I would for a constituent. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Patti, questions? Well, then let's move.
Interject. As sometimes constituents, I know the league, we might find this hard to believe, they don't actually know who the representative or senator is. And reaching out just to a name that they've heard or something they've seen. And I certainly don't, I don't want their first experience to be, I'm not your representative, because that's not how we work.
Oh, I think that's a great point, Ruth. And I think one of the things the league needs to do, and we all need to do, is a better job of civic education of not only who our representatives are, but how state and local government work. I know Keith's on the video, and we deal a lot with individuals that need to understand the civic structure of our government and their role as an important part of the process. As Linda said in the quote from Justice Brandeis, citizens are at the top of our democratic process. Linda, next question.
Yes, Kim will.
If I might briefly add real quick, pardon me for interrupting. I just shared in the chat where WDEL made an article about an apartment fire in the district to the west of me, and they referenced me as the state representative. So when Ruth Briggs-King mentioned that sometimes neighbors don't know, sometimes the press doesn't know. So that led to neighbors reaching out to me. And again, I just engaged. Thank you.
Oh, dear. Thank
Linda.
you. We do need the next question, Kim. Now, we were wondering if you could share with us if there was a specific time when constituent advocacy actually led you to change your mind about something. And if there was such a time, and maybe there wasn't, but what approach did those citizen advocates take? How did they communicate with you, and how did that work out?
That's a really good question. I don't know that there was a specific time when I needed to where someone made me change my mind on something, which I hope is a reflection that I'm doing with the community, is asking from the beginning. And also that I'm only a year in, so I'm sure there will be time when that happens. But there was a time when I was really undecided about a particular vote, and community outreach helped. We did a bill last year around reform for, oh my goodness, what was it? For bail reform. It was changing some things with the bail system. And I was particularly undecided about it because it was focused on some of the most heinous and severe crimes. And I think that it gets easy for us as individuals to say that those people deserve the book thrown at them, the key melted, and for them to be forgotten about. It gets really easy for us to say that when we're looking at particular crimes. But I'm also a firm believer that the way that we're doing corrections right now, the way that our justice system is set up, is not necessarily set up to be effective even for people who commit some of the most severe crimes. So I was really back and forth on that vote. And I got a lot of outreach from organizations like the ACLU, NAACP, and so many more that did not support that bill and did not want to see that bill pass. And so recognizing that I was going to be the only one in my chamber to vote against it was really hard, but seeing that I wasn't the only person that felt the way that I felt about that bill really helped me to make a firm decision to vote against it.
Okay, this is an interesting question. Let's let Representative Lambert take a stab at this one. If there was something that you didn't know, you changed your mind because of citizen advocacy?
Yes, absolutely. For me, I don't always vote directly along party lines. For me, it really is about representing my constituents, representing the people that voted me into office. It's not only my obligation, but for me, it's a part of my personal constitution. So, if you really have a compelling thing to say about any particular bill, kindly let me know. One of the issues and topics that have kind of influenced me are bills that disproportionately impact our economically challenged brothers and sisters. I don't want to support a bill that's more of a poverty tax. I have an issue with that. Also, bills that have disproportionate punitive impacts on low income people as well. I just want to make sure that we're looking out for all of our citizens and checking the corners for any blind spots. Thank you.
Representative Briggs-King, would you like to reflect on this one a bit?
Sorry, I'm trying to think of one bill in particular, and I can't think of what the piece of legislation was, but I hadn't been in office that long, and I can readily recall my colleagues on the other side, J.J. Johnson and Dennis P. Williams, before he was mayor of Wilmington. And it was an issue. And so when the vote was done, they came over to me and JJ said, "Representative, I can't quite figure you out. You're like a round peg trying to fit into a square hole." He said, "Yeah, I think you're going this way and you go that way." And I said, "Well, that's because I vote on issues and not just the politics of it. I'm going to vote on an issue." And I think, the kiss of death in politics can be if somebody sees you as wishy-washy or flip-flopping. But it's very different if you haven't made up your opinion and that you're seeking an answer, and then you clarify, this is my response and why. And I think your colleagues, as well as your constituents, appreciate that I may not always be the same on every issue. I like to think, and sometimes I might agree with a concept, but the technical language or something in there is not quite where it needs to be. So, to me, that's an important part of being able to explain. And if people will give you the opportunity to really be thoughtful in that regard about changing or having a position different than they think you would.
All right, thank you. Representative Shupe.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to answer this. I don't think that there's one specific bill that I can speak to, but I will say over the last 3 years and being the mayor of Milford, what has helped me most kind of develop my way of thinking and going after legislation either proactively or voting certain ways really is the overall information that people are continuing to give to me every day. I mean, there's what I recommend that people do, and I love it when they do this, is when they're passionate about something or they have, they feel really connected with something, that they send me books, they send me articles, not physical books, but like, here's the book you would read, like here, an email, here's the title of the book, and here's so I can go buy it or get it out of the library, or here's an article, here's the link, and give me a chance to see research on this subject that kind of broadens my horizon or broadens my understanding of that. And I think that in general has really allowed me to understand kind of at the grassroots what is going on, what the discussion level is at the grassroots, and not look at this kind of political party versus political party, but understand the issues at hand even more. So, even that's what has kind of swayed me in some ways or the other, is people send information that I can digest, that I can read, that I can, sit with for a little bit and kind of understand and ask more questions and go research myself. So as a second to that, I would say, anytime that someone has these things that they want to bring forward, send me suggestions for books, for articles, for podcasts, or anything, because I just love trying to. I'm always have a book in my hand, so I'm always trying to figure out more information, how much more research I can do on the subject, even if it's not the specific issue. It broadens my horizon of it, kind of on the outside of it as well.
Hey, any questions on this segment?
Hold on.
Oh.
Does not look like any questions, as much as people are just stating that they really appreciate contacting the representatives, because a lot of people aren't sure where to go or who's on the various committees, and more importantly, that they know somebody's listening to them. So thank you.
All right, Kim, we'll have the next video.
As we start to wrap up, do you have any other thoughts or advice for citizens as they approach the advocacy with you and members of the Senate that you'd like to share with us as ways that we can best serve you and the citizens of the state of Delaware?
Absolutely. I think starting right here is probably the best advice that I can give, is that pick your issues. What are the issues that you care about? What are the issues that keep you up at night, that move you? And then once you figure out what those are, find an advocacy group that is feeling the same way that you're feeling. We are powerful as individuals, but we are a force and a movement when we move into community. So if you find and connect with other people who care about the same issues that you care about, it amplifies your voice, it amplifies the issue, and it really, really is powerful for us to see how many people care about an issue, to see how people feel about an issue. You know, I always go back to this idea that being a senator or a representative is so glamorous, and it is. I mean, it's exciting. It's a really cool title. The office is nice, but at the end of the day, I'm just a voice and a vessel for the people that put me here. And so hearing from you guys, hearing from constituents, hearing from advocacy groups makes me that much better of a legislator. That really is the glitz and the glamour, because I'm amplifying what is important to the community. I'm making sure that the League of Women Voters' voice is heard and represented on the chamber floor. And so if I could give any piece of advice, it would be to find a community and make a lot of noise alongside your community.
Well, again, thank you to the senator. In our closing minutes, I'd like to ask your final thoughts on citizen advocacy and how best we all can serve democracy and the state of Delaware. And let me start with you, Bryan.
I would say, again, anytime that you have even just a question about something, to feel comfortable to reach out to us, feel comfortable to stop us in the grocery store, to ask questions, even if it's not, hey, I want you to vote for HB, whatever it is, but you're like, hey, what's going on with, this issue up at Legislative Hall? Or, you know what, my husband and I, or my daughter and I, whoever, have been thinking about, keeping our streets safe. Do you know any legislation that's coming out about this? And kind of proactively, again, building that relationship. I really feel that is the better way. And again, for me, it is about, research, getting to know people better. I try to have community coffees. We're starting them up again in not this weekend, but next weekend. And I think that is a very good way for people to get to know their representative or their senator, to meet them in person, to talk with them in person, also to see other people within their community, to see how diverse their community is and see how diverse the thought there is within their community. Because as we know, a lot of times on social media, there is, it kind of keeps you within your own worldview, and you don't get to see a lot of out there. So it really helps people understand that there are people that are passionate about the same things, or people that are passionate about other things, maybe directly opposed to what they think, but coming together and having those discussions as a community. The other thing I'll end with is that I would also like people to, when I know they focus on us for a lot of state issues, but I would like for them to think about things in their backyard as well that we may be able to help with. So sometimes there will be individuals who think very broadly about, street violence or maybe another issue, but come with us with about some challenges that are happening right in your backyard as well, because there may be ways that we can work with either the city or with the county or with ways through the state that may be able to help improve what's going on at the ground level, and not just kind of a philosophical feeling about a certain issue.
Thank you, Bryan. And Ruth, your final thoughts?
I think my final thoughts would be is to don't assume, to go ahead, because sometimes people are coming from a very broad or one perspective or whatever, and just encourage people to engage in a really good dialogue, whether that be through email or in person or whatever. So to be willing to ask, to be willing to listen, really, and sometimes it's to seek that answer, because it's about communicating, and it's about understanding what a person might want. I think one of the things that's really been challenging for us in the last 2 years, and I'm looking at a couple of the colleagues on this call, realizing they've never had a regular legislative session where they walk into Legislative Hall and the public is lined up to see them, or there's a group lined up to see them. And it's very different when you have that removal, and it's very different when you, the public, are limited to 2 minutes to make a comment on a critical or piece of legislation. Trying to get that said is very difficult. So I think that while we're in that stage, it's even more important to communicate in writing, convey that personal story, and do those other things. So don't assume that everyone knows what you know or thinks the same or has bad intent. They might have good intent. Ask questions. I learn from questions. I ask a lot of questions. And then through it all to really try and stay calm when things can get frustrating. So to me, those are just some things about communicating with us, establish a relationship and maintain that.
Great, as always. Thank you, Ruth. Larry, you have the last word.
Thank you, everyone. I'll keep it brief. Again, it was so wonderful to see you all, so many familiar faces. Thank you for the work that you've done. For me, I just want you to know that whatever you're advocating for, whatever your concerns are, they are valid. Never feel like anything you have to say is less than valid, less than adequate. There are cases where all political winds are going in one direction. It's a groundswell. Everyone's moving in that way. But you have something else to say. Please reach out. I'm really big on equity over equality. And there's nuances that some of us miss. I have been swayed on votes before. I do not like virtue signaling bills that are feel-good bills that really aren't effective, really aren't meaningful, really aren't impacting the communities they claim to impact. Never give up. Always reach out. And this meeting here was an example of citizen advocacy. Keep up the great work, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Linda?
Are there any, thank you very much, everyone. Patti, are there any final general questions? Because we don't want to get into specific programmatic issues.
Correct. There is there's a question being asked in Delaware. How difficult is it for you to vote against your party lines? Representative Shupe?
Question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I when that came up in the chat, I was like, that's good. I like that. I think, as far as our caucus goes, and Ruth said this in the chat as well, we are encouraged all the time to vote our conscience and to vote, the way that the people in our district, if it affects that district. And I really do appreciate that. There's not a hard party line of all of us have to vote this way or something's going to happen or you need to vote. Where I do see it difficult is sometimes in the public where people will say, wait a minute, he's a Republican and he voted this way on a bill, or maybe for some of my colleagues the exact opposite. And I want to encourage people to get to know their representative and to look at kind of what they're voting on and what their voting record is. I think a lot of times party lines can, not always, but party lines can get in the way of good dialogue and good legislation. So I try not to look at party lines as much as possible and try to look at my district, try to look at the state of Delaware and what can kind of be good for the person on the ground. So I usually hear it from the public more than my own caucus I don't hear it from, but I do hear it from the public sometimes. And you just have to explain to them. That's where you have to be an advocate kind of for yourself sometimes and say, look, this is why I voted for this. This is why I think it's good for the public. This is why I think it's good for Delawareans or my district. And it's just a challenge that I think all of us have, and just be an advocate for yourself and why you did it.
Thank you. Representative Lambert?
Yeah, for me, I think that it happens. It's healthy. And Delaware is a state where we all work together. I've worked with Representative Shupe. I've worked with Representative Briggs-King. They're not in my party, but you know, we're all one collective. So it happens. It's good for democracy. It's good for Delaware. It doesn't happen often. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, we are encouraged to vote our conscience, vote our district, like Representative Briggs-King said.
Hey, I think that wraps it up. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, again, thank you to our panel. I certainly heard some things here today that I didn't expect, and it will take us a while to digest and apply, particularly to the League of Women Voters, as we proceed with our advocacy. So thank you, thank you.